History is filled with moments where perception and reality violently collide, and few battlefields embody this more than the one we explore today. Stay with us as we uncover the brutal truth behind a conflict that promised peace, but delivered only a terrifying premonition of the war to come. They named it Shiloh, a Hebrew term for a place of peace, yet for 23,000 Americans, it transformed into a waking nightmare. What truly unfolded within those Tennessee forests, and how did this single engagement permanently alter the very nature of Civil War combat? The round that felled General Johnston ended a life, but it could not destroy the legend. While Confederate forces were withdrawing from Shiloh, their leaders were already proclaiming triumph. The reality? This fight crippled the South in a manner they refused to acknowledge, while unveiling the terrifying face of future conflicts. To aid our mission, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to Rootvolutionary. Confederate Lieutenant William G. Stevenson described the awful retreat on April 7th, a spectacle of agony he prayed he would never see again. The defeated army moved slowly along a constricted, almost unusable route. A column of wagons extended into the distance, crammed with injured soldiers, piled like cargo, their moans and oaths blending with the sound of mules straining through the mire. To their rear, a broken infantry unit shoved past the wagons, trailed by 4 soldiers bearing a wounded commander on a litter. Men hobbled past, some with arms smashed and hanging limp, others carrying terrible injuries. As if the man-made terror was insufficient, the sky opened in anger. A cold rain started at dusk, intensifying until it was a ceaseless, torrential downpour. Wagon after wagon lumbered past, loaded with the wounded and the dying, countless without even a cloth for shelter. Close to 300 died throughout that traumatic withdrawal. At the same time, 760 miles to the east in Richmond, the Confederate capital, Beauregard's declarations of success slowly yielded to a somber acknowledgement. The facts were incontrovertible. The Confederacy had not succeeded in recapturing the Mississippi Valley. Tennessee was now lost to them. The scales of power in the Western theater remained unmoved. Davis's military advisor, Robert E. Lee, had cautioned that losing the Mississippi Valley would spell the end for the Atlantic states, a dire prediction now coming to pass. The repercussions of the Battle of Shiloh, also called Pittsburgh Landing, brought personal fallout. For the first time in his wartime service, P.G.T. Beauregard's standing was tarnished. His hasty victory dispatch made him an object of derision and ridicule. Even the victorious Union commanders were not spared from criticism. William Sherman faced condemnation from his troops and the public. Why, in spite of multiple alerts, had he discounted the danger posed by Johnston's army? Appearing later before the Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War, Sherman chose to steer the discussion toward his Atlanta campaign. He stated he was saving the committee from, in his words, a needless expenditure of their time. His commander, Ulysses S. Grant, endured more severe examination. Western governors, observing the casualty rolls from their states, called for an accounting. Why was he taken by surprise at Shiloh? Where were the patrols? Even his own troops whispered about his failings. Many wrote off the entire event as a gigantic error, a deed of careless neglect that verged on the unlawful. When Major General Henry Halleck, Grant's department commander, reached the field on April 11th and assumed command, he initiated an excessively cautious advance on Corinth, now essentially a vast infirmary filled with ailing and wounded Confederates enduring shortages, typhoid, and dysentery. For the second time in 60 days, Grant thought of stepping down. But Sherman convinced him otherwise, urging him to remain. A pivotal partnership was being forged, one that would become critical in the coming years. In spite of its immense cost, Shiloh concluded with a Union triumph. The Confederate Army pulled back. Union troops held the battlefield and the strategic initiative. That upper hand was reinforced almost instantly when word came of the surrender of Island No. 10 on the Mississippi, just hours after the fighting at Shiloh ceased. Now western Tennessee and Memphis were vulnerable. Yet the carnage of Shiloh produced another outcome. It compelled Grant and his best commanders to face the savage truth of the conflict, what it required, and the price that must be paid. As Grant later reflected, prior to Shiloh, I, along with countless citizens, thought the rebellion would collapse quickly if we landed a mortal blow. Success at Forts Donelson and Henry appeared to confirm this. But when the Confederate Army reassembled, not merely holding but delivering powerful assaults, I understood the Union could only be saved through complete subjugation. A dark epiphany, one that 2 years later would unleash destruction upon southern bastions such as Atlanta, the Shenandoah Valley, and the Carolinas. Robert E. Lee's prior admonition now resonated with doom. Losing the Mississippi Valley would seal the fate of the Atlantic states. Shiloh sent a shock through both the North and the South, but as Southern author George Washington Cable later noted, the battle's genuine price was counted in more than the dead and wounded. After Shiloh, the South never smiled again. Shiloh was more than a military engagement. It was a watershed, an instant when the fantasy of a short war evaporated, when the dreadful concept of absolute victory solidified. For Grant, it was an education paid for in blood. For the South, it was the start of an unstoppable descent. When the gunpowder dissipated, one fact endured. The Confederacy would never be the same. The path forward promised only further desolation. The fires of Atlanta, the burned lands of the Shenandoah, the wreckage of the Carolinas. The Civil War had been fundamentally transformed. Thank you for marching through history with us here at Rootvolutionary. If you found this deep dive into the pivotal moment at Shiloh compelling, ensure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Until then, remember, history isn't just a record of battles. It's the story of the irreversible moments that define our world.